Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming. Super excited to chat a little bit about AI for BI and give you a little bit of a self-admitted, a little bit of a skeptic and sort of my view. I'm Jamie Davidson. I'm one of the founders at Omni. We've got a booth just over that way. Look for the pink if you want to continue the conversation. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So if you're like me, you've probably had a bunch of conversations at the conference already about the potential for LLMs and generative AI to transform data. We are super excited about the use case, and I think in general, I've been working for data for a long time. I've been working at BI companies, I've been a data practitioner. I think everyone's always hoped for the potential to actually enable self-service and never have been able to realize it. You know, you can get at most sort of a quarter of the organization, according to like Gartner's stats, using data. And maybe text to data actually has the ability to lower the friction, sort of lower the bar, and actually bring everybody in to actually use data. There's a ton of promise for generative AI. We're really excited about it, but while LLMs have gotten incredibly smart and the sort of their abilities to, like, honestly, continually change on a week-to-week basis, they don't have context about your business. If you ask a question like, how many users do we have? It effectively implies a bunch of context. It has a bunch of different reasonable interpretations. It could mean how many people have signed up for the service. It could mean how many people have used the product and in what time frame. How many people have made a purchase. What does a purchase mean? Like, these things are all nuanced questions. Does a purchase include fraudulent things? Does it include things that have been returned? Does it include test accounts? Like, they're difficult definitions to make, and certainly can't be just inferred without any context by an LLM. See if this has got a little delay. Sorry. Our fundamental belief is that AI alone cannot realize the potential of enabling self-service and solving all of the hard parts about BI, but we think that there's ways to do it, and we've got a bunch of customers and a bunch of use cases we can talk about just in a little bit too. A few principles that we sort of have developed. One, the data quality matters, and this is something that maybe sounds obvious to a bunch of data folks, but if you're making decisions based on data, it needs to be accurate. You need to have consistency. You need to have a mechanism to trust it. You need to have humans to be able to actually understand it. You also need ability to provide guardrails for LLMs. LLMs are inherently non-deterministic systems. You have to start from the premise that they're not going to be 100% accurate. It's not, natural language is inherently imprecise. How many users do we have does not contain enough context to actually tell you what a definitive answer is. There's no right answer. There's lots of kind of contextual answers that you can give. So accepting that LLMs aren't going to be perfect, they're going to be non-deterministic. You need to design for a human-in-the-loop system where the system can actually become better with usage. You can refine it over time. And then finally, we think the mechanism to do this is effectively a shared vocabulary to enable humans and AI to use consistent definitions. And that is the wrong direction. I must be holding it backwards. And we think the way to do this is a semantic layer. So a semantic layer at our core, and this is something that I think the industry is starting to do. We're excited to be launch partners with Databricks and their new metrics view, where you effectively can encode some semantics into your Databricks instance. But semantic layer, just to sort of really quickly define it, it's a place where data teams can define data relationships and business logic. It's an abstraction layer that enables folks in an organization to use a single definition of complicated metrics like gross margin and use it everywhere consistently too, and then have change management on top of it. So if you update that definition of gross margin, you do it in one place. You don't have to go into a workbook across every single workbook to go and update these things. Just to show you what like a kind of articulation of it is, you can think of a semantic view or a semantic layer as an interface to data. It creates basically a shared vocabulary with basically business context and semantics and data relationships being defined explicitly too. And it gives the LLMs effectively a shared space to operate within too. You constrain the input space and output space and dramatically increase the accuracy of it. It also makes the answers that an LLM generates interpretable to the non-technical user. So we've got lots of executives, we've got lots and lots of operations folks, customer success folks, sales folks using data through chat and they're able to interpret the data because it's not a single number, which is completely uninterpretable and is highly potential. It can be inaccurate. It also is not. It's not a SQL statement too. That executive can't read the SQL statement and understand the gross margins correct. That salesperson doesn't know what your definition of your pipeline is or the workflow that you maybe use to define ARR, say, for example. The semantic layer effectively creates that shared vocabulary. The way you build a semantic layer, we think it is effectively iterative. You want to start with the sort of core primitives of the schema for a given data warehouse, and then enumerate transformational logic and analysis. You want to build up that semantic layer iteratively. So as you're answering questions, as you're building up analysis, as you're building up dashboards, you're effectively creating reusable pieces of logic. Not all of that is going to be shared, but there needs to be basically a workflow to go and take that and sort of standardize it directly. So the way we think that this sort of human-in-the-loop workflow works, I'll just fast forward. Users can ask questions in natural language and get results. Those results are interpretable because we're showing them the fields and the context for which they're getting that data. Users can actually iterate on those queries. They can use that as a starting place, but very, very rarely, and I'm sure all the folks that sort of are data practitioners have been doing it for a while, very rarely is where you start necessarily the exact answer. It probably actually spawns 4 or 5 more questions. Like, I'm looking for a trend for this KPI over time. Why is it changing? What are the next what are the next degrees of freedom I want to go and ask questions of to be able to go better understand it? And AI can even help with that, summarizing it and basically recommending next steps, recommending things that can kind of remove friction from that process. Excuse me. We think that AI has the potential to remove friction in a variety of contexts. We've seen a bunch of success where folks are building out customer-facing analytics, so using their data to their customers to show usage or demonstrate value for folks too. Those are places where inherently, because you're building for your customers, they don't have an internal team to go and rely on to go ask questions of. They are forced to effectively product manage the data assets, forced to product manage and curate the experience so that the user can interpret what date to use or what metrics mean, how it ties back into the workflows. Those are great use cases for LLMs because you've effectively built a data model in doing that too, and you need a data model to go in and adopt it. We think that it's great for business users to ask questions, sort of for the whole premise of self-service, sort of predicated on how do you make it as easy as possible for people to get trusted data. And then finally, and I'm sure this is going to appeal to this audience in general, we think that it's going to help data teams too. It's really good. LLMs are really good at unstructured data, and folding in workflows to be able to go and derive insight and value from structured data is super interesting. So we'll talk a little bit about that. To talk first about customer experience, we think it can dramatically increase sort of the degrees of freedom you can give your customers and ask questions. So no longer are you just generating a PDF and sending it to them, on an ad hoc basis. You can basically open up the sort of the full realm of possibility of the customer's data too, and can be done in a way where it's super interpretable to an end user. We also think that it means you're lowering the friction so that everyone can consume it. You don't have to be numerate. You don't have to write SQL. You don't have to even know how to use a spreadsheet to necessarily be able to go and use natural language. We think that these things need to be integrated into a variety of experiences. So there's rich APIs and an MCP server to integrate it with your existing chat interfaces so that when you're looking for organizational data, you're also able to intersperse sort of structured data too with sort of context broadly. And then finally, too, it's incredibly important to enable sort of a feedback loop. They can ask subsequent questions. They can start from a dashboard. They can go into a chat interface. They can use that chat interface in an iterative way so that it can actually answer questions, too. Really, basically matching the sort of classic analytical workflow. To talk about business users, we think this has the potential. There's probably a billion people or so that can use Excel. Everyone speaks natural language. We think this has the potential to dramatically increase sort of the sort of aperture of what data can be applied to. We can also leverage some of Databricks' new functionality. So in Omni, the name is, hey, we want to bring data to everyone in the organization. That's sort of the genesis for the company. We want to have an interface for everybody. So for the most technical folks, rich IDEs, data modeling, SQL. For the less technical folks, it's point-and-click interfaces, it's Excel, it's natural language. You can leverage the sort of even the more technical things, the things like the AI classification via SQL inside Omni, and create standardized reusable metrics so that you can actually do things in an iterative fashion. You can do things where they're parameterized parameterized. And we think that this is actually going to start to enable folks in their everyday workflow. Because we use direct one-to-one parity with Excel, we have an infinite corpus of content to train on too. LLMs are incredibly good at writing things like Excel functions. So we can give people accelerators and basically leverage sort of powerful things that sort of the underlying infrastructure gives you. Also give you accelerators in the front end interface. And then finally, too, we've talked about this a little bit already, but like enabling that sort of natural language in a semantic context means that end users can ask questions, they can interpret results, they can be guaranteed that they're referencing revenue or customer requests and the common definition of it too, and have it be integrated into the full analytical experience. We've seen customers create a huge amount of value for this. We got one customer that has a reasonably non-technical sales team, and the sales team was effectively prospecting into a bunch of startups that were seeking to go public. I'm sure they'd love to sell to Databricks themselves. They wanted to go ask a bunch of questions of a bunch of structured IPO data, and sort of this is kind of, think of this as enrichment data for their CRM, and they were able to enable their sales folks to actually ask questions of their data and reduce the number of tickets coming into the data teams by a huge order of magnitude too, and dramatically increase sort of the feedback loop. It enables people to ask more questions of their data and get more value. So sort of last, we can talk a little bit about data teams. Super excited about removing some of the manual effort from the data engineering workflow. At our core, Omni is all about building semantic models. We want to make it super easy to have that workflow. Go from lightweight ad hoc, insight, new metric, new piece of metadata, and have it progressively sit wherever it makes most sense. It can live in our semantic layer, it can live in Databricks' semantic layer, it can be materialized inside your data warehouse too. We've got a tight integration with data engineering workflows. We'll even go so far as to do things like generate a Git pull request in your DBT project with a rich bidirectional integration to enable you to take that logic and put it wherever it makes most sense. If you want to go for cost performance or standardization reasons, materialize it, that makes a ton of sense. We want to facilitate it, and we'll go so far as to do it for you. Something that I think data people are typically very focused on and is incredibly important is the governance associated with their data too. The sort of the last but not least benefit of having text to data ultimately pass through a semantic model is you can actually apply row level, column level permissions because you're marrying the stochastic system that the generative AI does, which is great for asking new questions, it's great for summarizing data. It's not so good when you want to have strict adherence to row level security where you don't want to hallucinate joins, you don't want to hallucinate new potential definitions for gross margin and have it be misinterpreted by an end user. In order to basically have that sort of tight tie to a deterministic system, we basically generate semantic queries. It means that every single chat generated piece of data is enforced at a row and column level, which is great. We want to give you very granular controls over this and think it's incredibly important. So to reiterate, we think there's a couple of really important principles that we've got for AI. Highest level, you first have to accept that generative AI is not going to be 100% accurate. I think probably everyone who's played with it will accept this and see, it's hallucination prone. It has huge potential though for removing friction from the analytical workflows. The way you can incorporate it though is by basically giving it context and structure. You want to constrain the degrees of freedom that the AI has and effectively design for a human in the loop so that the human can interpret it, the human can iterate on it to build a mental model for what the AI is actually helping it with, or helping the humans with, and sort of fold it in to create leverage for the organization. Just to close, at a very high level, we got a quick 2x2. I sort of talked to with customers thinking about implementing generative AI for data projects. On one axis you've got the difficulty of a question. On the other axis you've got level of effort. So it either can be easy or hard, or difficult or not difficult, low difficulty. The way I sort of frame it is. Data teams should be strategic thought partners when the questions are hard, when they're not pre-modeled, when they're things where you don't know exactly the space that you're going into. When the questions are easy and low effort, it's a great spot to start with generative AI. So things like lookups, things like what did the account team on this deal? What was the performance for this specific campaign? What was what does our pipeline look like? These are the simple types of questions that people can actually, almost immediately out of the box get on top of a semantic model. The questions that are slightly more, slightly higher effort are also still possible. They effectively are possible though with data modeling. And you want to do that in sort of an iterative workflow where you say, like things like, as an example, a customer showed me a use case where they were doing a cohort analysis and they wanted to see the performance of a specific cohort. That's a sophisticated analysis to typically go do, but they'd effectively pre-modeled it inside of the Omni experience, and they were able to ask questions of it in an incredibly intuitive way using natural language because that context was already pre-built in the data model. So I'd sort of say you want to start with the easy stuff. You want to work your way up in complexity too by leveraging the context that you can build into the data model. So that's the sort of core focus. Firmly believe in the value of generative AI. You need to basically encode the context of your business into the semantic model, and we think we've got the best way to go and do that. So just if you're interested in chatting, I'll stick around for a little bit too. We've also got a booth right over there. Look for the pink. Come talk to us. Thank you.